They had the money. They had the engineers. They had the decades of brand trust built on a promise that their name alone could sell anything to anyone, anywhere on Earth. They had dealers in every city, lobbyists in every government, and logistics networks that could move 500,000 cars across continents without blinking. They had the infrastructure, they had the data, they had every conceivable advantage a company could hold walking into the most important automotive transition in 100 years. They spent billions preparing for the electric revolution, billions more positioning themselves as the future. They launched campaigns, they filled trade show floors, they made promises on stages in front of thousands of analysts who wrote reports that reached millions of investors who moved markets based on those words. And even then, they still failed. While Toyota was absorbing that failure in China, watching the BZ4X2 become a case study in what happens when legacy engineering meets a market that has already moved on, something else was happening in a different kind of building. Not a factory, not a test track, a software campus. And the people inside weren't thinking about horsepower or paint finishes. They were thinking about what a car actually is when you strip away everything the old industry told you it had to be. They were thinking about the operating system, about the neural architecture, about what happens when the machine that moves you through the world becomes an extension of the machine you carry in your pocket, not through a cable, not through an app, but at the architecture level, at the DNA level. And that's when everything started to slip out of control. The car they built together looks, at first, like exactly what you'd expect. A sedan. Long hood, tapered roofline, 4 doors. It sits at 4.93 meters. It's wide, 1.87 meters, low enough to feel like it means something when it moves. On the surface, it reads as a polished, premium effort from a joint venture trying to win back credibility in a market that had already walked away. That's the narrative they want you to accept. It's clean, it's comfortable, it's the story that lets the competition sleep at night. And that's exactly where the trap is. Start with the motor, because before you can understand what this car is, you have to understand what Huawei built inside it, and why nothing the traditional industry has produced comes close to it. The system is called Drive One. It's not a motor, it's not a powertrain, it's a compressed universe of engineering. Electric motor, reducer, transmission, inverter, power control unit, and onboard charger collapsed into a single integrated piece. A machine that performs 6 jobs and weighs as much as one. The entry version produces somewhere between 207 and 220 kilowatts, around 300 horsepower. Rear-wheel drive, 0 to 100 in approximately 6 seconds. Those numbers will mean nothing to you after you hear what comes next.
The reason the numbers don't tell the story is thermal efficiency. Every electric motor in production loses energy to heat. That's the physics every manufacturer accepts as the cost of doing business. Huawei refused the cost. The thermal management system inside Drive One recaptures that energy instead of bleeding it into the air. The result is real-world range that doesn't match what the brochure says, it exceeds it. The battery is LFP chemistry, lithium iron phosphate, in configurations ranging from 75 to 90 kilowatt hours, depending on the variant. Under China's CLTC cycle, the car claims over 700 kilometers of range. In conditions closer to real-world use, in a climate like Brazil's, you're looking at 500 to 550 kilometers. Battery supply comes from CATL and BYD, 2 of the 3 most important battery manufacturers on the planet, feeding one car. And this is just the beginning. Now look up. Above the windshield, mounted flush into the roofline, is a LiDAR unit, laser-based detection, 3-dimensional environmental mapping in real time, not a camera that interprets what it sees, not a radar that bounces signals and guesses, a system that builds a living model of the world around the vehicle and uses that model to make decisions at machine speed. This is not a feature. This is the foundation of a different philosophy about what a car is supposed to do. A camera tells you what something looks like. LiDAR tells you exactly where it is, its dimensions, its distance, its velocity, with the precision that human vision cannot match and that camera-based systems can only approximate. Legacy manufacturers have been debating whether LiDAR is necessary, whether it's cost-effective, whether the market is ready. But what comes next changes everything. The software layer is where this car stops being a car and starts being something the industry doesn't have a category for yet. HarmonyOS, Huawei's operating system, not a skinned version of Android, not a licensed interface from a third-party vendor, but a native ecosystem built by one of the most sophisticated technology companies in the world. And what it enables inside this vehicle is categorically different from anything the European or American automotive industry has shipped. The voice assistant doesn't take commands, it understands context. Tell it you're cold and hungry and want pizza, and it adjusts the cabin temperature and routes you to the nearest pizzeria. No menu navigation, no sequential inputs, one sentence, one response. The machine interprets intention, not syntax. When you get into the car with your phone, active video calls transfer from the handset to the vehicle's display automatically. No tapping, no confirming. The car detects you, facial recognition, active at entry, and loads your seat position, mirror angles, climate preference, and music. The environment reconfigures itself around you before you've put on your seatbelt. And this is where it becomes uncomfortable, because what Huawei has done is not integrate technology into a car. They've made the car itself a node in a personal ecosystem. The vehicle doesn't serve transportation.
It serves continuity. Your life doesn't pause when you're driving. It continues at the same resolution, with the same intelligence, through the same interface, just moving at highway speed. At this point, this is no longer competition. One does infotainment, the other does operating system. One does voice control, the other does natural language understanding. One shows you a menu, the other reads your context and acts. The BYD Han is a serious car. Luxurious interior, Blade battery technology, legitimate range. It competes in the same segment at a similar price point with genuine engineering credibility. On paper, this is a fair fight. One runs a multimedia system that requires you to adapt to it. The other runs HarmonyOS, which adapts to you. This is not a comparison. This is a generational gap. This car doesn't compete, it replaces. Look at what the design choices tell you. The front lighting strip runs the full width of the vehicle, a single connected band of LED that makes the face of the car unmistakable in any condition. The rear lamps mirror it, ultra-thin, connected, deliberate. The door handles are flush-mounted and retractable, not a styling choice, a functional one. Every surface that doesn't need to disrupt airflow doesn't. This is a car designed by people who understood that aerodynamics and software and powertrain are not separate engineering problems. They're the same engineering problem. And every design decision either serves the answer or it doesn't belong on the car. And this is where the industry loses control of the narrative. Now consider the practical reality of what this car means in markets like Brazil, where Toyota already has the infrastructure, the trust, and the service network, and where BYD is building a factory in Bahia, where GWM is expanding, and where the EV transition is no longer a question of if, but when and by whom. A vehicle priced between 350 and 400,000 reais, positioned between the Chinese electrics and the German luxury sedans, that carries Toyota's reliability reputation and Huawei's tech stack, lands in a market that has never seen exactly this combination before. Not the technology, not the partnership, not the positioning. The 500 to 550 kilometer real-world range removes the practical objection. The HarmonyOS ecosystem removes the technology objection. The Toyota badge removes the trust objection. And this changes the entire game. Go back to where we started. A company with every advantage, billions spent, engineers deployed, promises made, and a market in China that watched the BZ4X arrive and turned away. That failure was not about the motor, it was not about the battery. It was about understanding what a consumer in 2024 expects from a premium vehicle and arriving with an answer built for 2018.
It was about treating software as a feature when the market had already decided software is the product. It was about building in isolation when the only way to build competitively was to partner with the people who had already solved the problems you were still debating.
The BZ7 is Toyota's answer to its own failure, not a defensive answer, not a compromise, a radical recalibration built with the partner that, right now, understands the connected vehicle better than anyone else in the world. The industry spent 30 years telling you a car was defined by its engine, the last 10 years redefining it around the battery. The next 10 years will be decided by whoever controls the software layer, the operating system, the ecosystem, the interface between the driver and the machine. Toyota knew it couldn't win that war alone, so it didn't fight alone. You're not choosing a car, you're choosing which era you belong to. The legacy manufacturers are still designing around what you expect. The challengers are designing around what you don't know you need yet. And somewhere in the middle of that tension, inside a 4.93-meter sedan built in China by a Japanese company with a Chinese tech giant's brain, is a vehicle that refuses to be categorized by any framework the old industry built. The problem isn't that this car arrived. The problem is that you're still looking at the past.